Alright folks, I'm going to tie some winter steelhead nips, and in this case I need some black dubbing for it. And very often, especially for steelhead fishing, they like a lot of blingy stuff here, so we end up manufacturing a lot of our dubbings that we do. It basically mixing them up in a witch's brew. So what I'm going to do here is show you how I mix up a batch of dubbings, kind of quasi go about it. Understanding each batch of dubbing I make is different. So I'm going to go through a quick little run in how I actually make some of this dubbing. So just kind of follow along. This is a good way to use up a lot of your leftover stuff. Make something useful. Maybe save a penny or two. And then create something unique that you can use for yourself. So it's going to be a little bit of a mixed blast of leftovers and whatevers, and sometimes you can be in a fly shop, go through the bargain bin, find a bunch of real cheapy dubbing things, and then come home and create something very useful. So follow along. So very often what we use, in this case I want a black dubbing, so I got some of this fur. This is mostly rabbit and whatever, and here's a rabbit skin. Basically what I do is I buy for the bulk of this, I buy the rabbit skins, and they come in all sorts of dyed colors, so I just get skins, and you just sit here with your scissors and you just kind of shave away and get that in there and put that all into a pile in case I get a nice little pile. It's just basically you're just shaving it off the skin. Get that out of the way, and which is not rocket science, but the real trick here is in the synthetic stuff. This is where people have problems. This long plastic stuff, they're real long strands, and I don't know if you can see it on the camera. The strands are long, and if you just throw them in the coffee grinder, aka the coffee grinder. In fact, speaking of coffee, let me get this out of the way. I don't want to spill coffee. Good God, that could be a tragedy unto itself. But usually what happens is the synthetic stuff will wrap around the grinder. So you want to get in here with your scissors and cut it like, 3/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, more like about 3/8. And if you chop it, that'll help keep it from getting too knotted up in the grinder. And you just kind of put that in there. And you just kind of use your judgment areas. The more the mix, I like a lot of this pearl flash because it, once again, I always say steelhead like bling. So I usually put a little bit of that pearl flash in there. This is some leftover peacock dubbing from somewhere. Like I said, just some leftover stuff. You always end up with these little packages of little bits. Get rid of the bag. I'm going to throw all that in there. Here again, I'm going to do the same thing. And we just kind of create, since it's dark, I want like the peacock, this dark olive kind of mix into there too. Basically stay with dark shades. The only little trick is that sometimes this synthetic stuff can be hard to work with. And when you mix it in with natural fibers, they come a little bit more behave a little bit better. Get that out of the way. Now I got this mess right here. Now instead of shoving it all into the coffee grinder at once, one of the things I learned to do is just kind of gross mix it. Break up the little synthetic things, get them all in there, and just kind of do an initial mix by hand. Almost like we're kneading dough. Kind of like making a cookie or a bread. I like cookies better than bread. Both not good for you. Too many carbs and sugars. But we like that stuff. Anyways, I digress. And you can see I'm just kind of already getting kind of a quasi mix into this thing. So it's just kind of a pre-mix. Of course, what that does is that helps in the coffee grinder. What I'm going to do is, smaller batches seem to work better than bigger batches. So in time here, I'm just going to go a little bit bigger than I normally do. get it in here. Get the lid on right. Here we are. And see how that goes. Sometimes it won't mix too good and you got to kind of flip it, but in this case it mixed really good. And yeah, like that. There you go. I got a nice blingy batch of dubbing. Just a good way to use up leftover stuff. And like I said, you can go into a fly shop, you go into the bargain bins, or all the leftover dubbing that nobody wants, and create something very, very useful. That we'll use into the steelhead nymph right here that we're going to tie. And the steelhead nymph for tying is real simple, but here again, we can just make our own dubbing for it. Alright folks, this is a real simple fly. Kind of comes back under the heading of guide flies. Just because it's simple doesn't mean that it's that it's not effective. But it's a really good late winter, early spring stonefly pattern. As I might have mentioned earlier, even if we use it on the steelhead rivers, but even in your trout streams, this could be a player. Alright, let's tie this fly. Really quick, let me go through the materials. This fly has a bead. I'm using copper beads here, just because I like the copper beads. This is also a good fly pattern if you like tungsten. Go ahead and use the tungsten beads. I'm using a 1/8 bead with this. Flashback material. This is actually a craft store flashback material. I get it at a craft store, then I just wrinkle it all up really tight to give it that nice crinkly look. So yeah, you go right to a craft store and get this stuff. There's a tail on it. This is just some black saddle hackle I have floating around. I just like to have a nice black tail on it. Of course, copper wiring. And a nice pinch of the dubbing that we just manufactured in the beginning of this video. Now I'm going to be going over some dubbing techniques, so be mindful of that. And yes, I'm using in this case, I'm using some Tiemco size 10 hooks. They're a 5263 BL, whatever that means. It's a long shank nymph hook. The reason why I'm using these because I have a bunch. But it's your favorite size 10 nymph hook will work just fine. You can tie them a little small, a little bigger, whatever you'd like to do. And of course your favorite 8/0 or 6/0 black fly tying thread work just fine for this. Alright, let's tie it. Let's get on to tying this thing. I'm gonna get started up like we always do, winding back on itself with the black thread. And grab this black saddle hackle. And what I usually do is I'm not too concerned about stiff and long. I just want a nice pinch of moderately stiff material, and I just kind of juggle with my fingers. And nymphs got short tails on them, so I go about half a hook shank for a tail. Kind of a little proportion thing there. Get my tail tied in. See, I'm kind of holding the tail up, and I can tie it down on the shank. That helps keep the tails on the top. Then what I like to do is go and run up my copper wire, and I usually tie it on the side. Come back through. This copper wire is a medium copper wire, but it's a little bit heavy for this fly, so I'll make sure I have it well anchored at the base here so she'll wrap over good. Now what I've done is I've taken this flashback, this stuff, and cut it into, I don't know if you can see it too well on the camera. There we go, kind of hold it over my hand here. It's about, I don't know, 3/8 of a strip, and I'll come up about a little bit past half, get it kind of wrapped started onto the hook shank, and I'll hold it up. And then I'll just wind right back down, let it all munch in around the hook shank. And just right down to the base of the fly, stick that off the end. Now, I'm going to grab a small little wafer, almost a chip. You can see how I don't have a ball or like a big limp ball. I got a little bit of a chip of dubbing. So here's a dubbing tip, if you're not too good at it. Kind of hold it like a potato chip between your fingers. Come up, saliva's up front, lick your fingers, and just work I can hold it right down here in the camera. Work the edges. Don't try to mash the whole thing on at once. Just work the edges. Pinch, twist, pinch, twist. Go one direction. So you pinch it, twist it one direction. And in this case, I want a nice thin layer on the thread, because I want the back of the thorax here to be skinny. So I'm just going to put a thin load of dubbing on the, get my hands out of the way here so you can see it in the light, dubbing on the thread here. And I'm just going to wind kind of one butt wrapped pass-ish. Get a little bit past the halfway mark. Just like that. That keeps it thin. Grab the flashback material, pull it over, anchor it down, a couple of turns, come back up with the copper wire and just kind of play with it. One turn just off the body. Now I'll just butt wrap that. No, not butt wrap that, spiral wrap that. I want the, give or take a turn, around 4 turns. And I'll take it right up off the thorax onto the hook shank and secure it, bring it over. Since the wire's a little heavy, I just kind of wrap that over a little bit, hit it with my thumb, fold the tag end of that wire down, come back with a strip of stuff, fold it back over, wind back up on the thorax. It'll fly on itself a little bit. Now we're going to do just the opposite. So you can see I got a bigger chip or wafer, or what do you want to call it, of dubbing. And now I'm going to do a sloppy job. Before I did a nice, neat, petite. Here I just, we're just going to wad it on. So I can be a little bit more sloppy. I'm not even trying to be tight. I'm just giving it some twist. I mean, it just looks like a good old-fashioned mess. And I'll just kind of ball it on there. Looks like a big P, couple turns just behind the bead. Now what I can do is come in with the this material, groom it down, fold it over, tie it off, get it in there with a few turns, whip finish it, and then what I can do is flip it over and I can pick out the dubbing. That kind of is where the legs come from. And there we go. Real, not a complicated fly. Real easy, but effective. And here we go. This is Jay at JPEG Guides and Lost River Fishing. We are a year-round fly fishing catch and release guide service. We fish the Lake Ontario tributaries. And then during the spring and the summer, we also fish the inland trout streams, classic dry fly fishing. During the heat of the summer, we will do the warm water fishing for bass and pike. If you're interested in any of our outings or have any questions, please feel free to email us at fish@lostriversfishing.com. Hope to hear from you, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact us.